Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, and anyone in between. I appreciate all the views. There's been a few things that have happened this week, but not a huge amount that I've had much interest in. But for the sake of the channel, there are some talking points I know other people want to speak about. So, without further ado, let's get into it. It looks like there's currently trouble in the negotiations between Devin Haney and Regis Prograis. Their bout was initially scheduled to take place October the 28th, but at this precise moment, that looks like it's no longer happening. They were supposed to be at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, I believe. However, because they hadn't finalized the contract at that particular point, the venue has now been taken by another event, which therefore now means that they've got to find another event, another venue, which will change, I guess, purse splits and potential gate revenues and things like that. So it's back to square one with their negotiations. Regis Prograis obviously was not happy because he said he signed his contract a while back. Devin Haney is like, well, why the hell would you want to go on the same day as, Fury versus Ngannou? Like, that's clearly means you have no business sense. And we've given our takes regarding whether that should be on pay-per-view or not. It definitely shouldn't. However, it is a good fight. Now, with that being said, Adrian Broner has now said, well, look, if I'm not fighting Devin next, then I'm just going to fight Adrian Broner in November or December, and then have a big unification with either Subriel Matias or Teofimo Lopez next year. I have to wonder what his big obsession with Adrian Broner is at this point. Like 3 years ago, alright, it made sense because his name was still ringing a little bit, but like Broner at this point is a shell of the shell that he used to be. What high profile, what monetary value are you expecting to get from Adrian Broner? What eyes are you expecting to get? Like, he doesn't move the needle the way he used to. I mean, if he did, the PBC would have kept him locked into a contract and he wouldn't be signed with, Don King, who puts fights on in 250-seater leisure centers. Like, I just don't understand his obsession with Adrian, unless it's just to beat him up, because he really just wants to beat him up. But if that's the case, like, do that on your own dime. Like, I know for a fact, if I was Eddie Hearn, especially if I was looking at Adrian Broner for Conor Benn, who's nowhere near, world championship level, maybe not even European level at this point, I would not be looking to bankroll a fight for you against Adrian Broner. So no, and it's funny because he says that, but ultimately that can't happen anyway, because if he doesn't fight Devin Haney, he must fight Sandor Martin. That's his mandatory, and the mandatory has been called. He was only given a special permission to face Devin Haney because he was obviously the undisputed champ from the weight below, and he requested that. So he doesn't get to dictate if he fights Adrian Broner in November, December. He's putting it out there to try and gauge the interest of the public, but the public has no interest in that. Unfortunately, your next fight is either Devin or it's Sandor. Like, there's no in-betweens unless you drop the belt. And then if that's the case, then Subriel Matias or Teofimo Lopez is not a unification next year, and you go in as a super duper B-side as opposed to just the regular B-side you would be now. For Teo, maybe Subriel, yes, that's more of a 50-50, 60-40, 55-45 type scenario, but Teofimo is definitely a 60-40 at this point, and if you go in there with no belt, that's more of a 75-25 type deal. So yeah, he wants to be careful with that, but ultimately it's disappointing that fight is not sort of penciled in fully, but I'm assuming it will now be moved to like somewhere in November when there isn't any pay-per-view events, probably towards the end of November. Like, I'm not sure even what the Saturday is, but somewhere between sort of, I guess, the 20th and the 28th, I would assume, in somewhere in that region. But yeah, we wait and we hold out hope, but I'm still looking forward to that fight. I want to see that fight. So let's get on. So inexplicably, Savannah Marshall has now signed a multi-fight deal with the PFL to do MMA, or at least that's what it appears at this point in time. It's weird to understand from my part, just because, you know, you've got Amanda Serrano over there. She's done mixed martial arts before. She's trained in a little bit of BJJ, and yeah, I think she's 2-0 with two submissions at this point in time. Then you've got, I mean, Clarissa Shields, who did it. You know, she went over there for a challenge, and she went over there purely to get paid. Realistically, she's 1-1 at this point in time. But she learned a little bit of grapple game. But with like Savannah, it doesn't really make much sense. Now, to me, the only thing I can maybe think of is, obviously you go over there to try and reignite the rivalry with Clarissa Shields. Like, oh, well, she doesn't want to give me the rematch of boxing. Well, I'll come over here and do the same thing. And then I guess maybe because both of them realistically are more stand-up strikers, as opposed to, you know, wrestlers or like submission artists, jiu-jitsu, judo. You say to yourself, okay, well, if she can throw hands and then maybe throw a knee in there, or, you know, a kick or something, or an elbow, her being a northern lass, they're used to more having scraps on the cobbles, so to speak. So maybe it just makes it more like a street fight, and she has more advantages or more of a chance to win, as opposed to in a traditional boxing match. You could put it that way, but it's just, I don't know, it's weird, because I don't know necessarily if she's going to be able to make more money in the PFL now than she would still be making in boxing. That being said, I mean, she's got the Shadeja Green mandatory. Maybe she's not keen on that. The money would be fairly good, because Shadeja is with Most Valuable Promotions, and, you know, Jake Paul's not going to allow them to get paid peanuts. You know, they've got the DAZN platform. Savannah's got she's got Sky Sports, and it can't be a case of, oh, well, Sky Sports and Boxer don't want to do anything with DAZN and whatnot, because, well, the PFL is a DAZN exclusive in the UK at this point. So it's a bit weird. Maybe it's just a case also that if you look at sort of those divisions, you've only got Savannah, who else? Franchon Cruz, DAZN, Shadeja Green, and maybe Clarissa. Maybe there's just not enough opponents left to fight that will generate any decent money. Whereas in the PFL, maybe you get paid better base minimums for standard opponents. But even those standard opponents have got every opportunity to beat you. So it's a lot more risky. It's a weird one. Obviously, yes, it will be, I guess, a reignition of a rivalry between her and Clarissa, but I don't know of her having any, you know, backgrounds in kickboxing or anything like that. Like if Chantel Cameron went over there, or Shannon Ryan, that would make sense to me, because both of them, well, Shannon had sort of taekwondo and a kickboxing background. Chantel had a kickboxing background, and I think even Katie Taylor at some point had I know she had a football background, but I think she did kickboxing for a little bit as well. But yeah, that would make sense. Someone like Bree Howlin, who was a kickboxer as well, like those people transitioning to MMA makes sense to me. But I don't know if Savannah ever had that. I don't think she did. So it's an interesting situation. I'll keep my eye on it, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, I won't lie. So I would assume by now most people have seen that after last week, Terence Crawford said that he, you know, if Canelo wanted to fight at a catch rate of 158, he'd consider it, but he's not going, you know, realistically, he ain't going above 154, because, you know, there's weight divisions for a reason. Well, I still haven't watched the full Joe Rogan podcast, but I have seen the comments he made, where he's actually now said, you know, like, legacy is a big thing, and imagine being able to go and be 3-weight undisputed world champion, and that's just an amazing thing. Like, so whoever wins between Jermell Charlo and Canelo Alvarez, he'd be interested in taking on that task at 168. So he's done a complete U-turn to where he was before. Now, I think one of the reasons why that might be, and just my reason, like, you can leave yours down below. Two reasons. Number one, I don't think he wants to be doing this much longer in the game of boxing. Like, he's been boxing since he was a teenager. So I can imagine he's like, it's a long career, I'm getting the plaudits now. But maybe it's just a case of there's only about 2 or 3 big money fights for him left, not even necessarily including the Spence rematch, because even though he'll make good money for it, I don't think it's a big money fight anymore based on what happened in the first one. And if you pull it at 154 and there's no belts on the line, then it just becomes, can Errol Spence get revenge or redemption? It's not, it doesn't have the same prestige to it. Whereas he wanted to go to 154 to face Charlo. Charlo's jumped up to 160 to 168 for this fight. Now, you've got Tim Tszyu and Brian Mendoza, who are unifying interim titles on the 15th of October. I think it's just been announced, and they just had a press conference. But you say to yourself, okay, well, if I could face the winner of that fight, but there's no guarantee that I'll then be able to get the other 2 belts, because Charlo may not come down to defend them, which means they're going to get scattered and end up with 2 other people. I don't know if I want to have those 2 other fights with just those anyones, because I can get the belts, but I'm not going to make the money that, I've been making, or that I've recently just started making. I'm all about big money fights. I'm all about legacy. Those fights don't particularly do anything for my legacy apart from making me a 4-weight world champion. But the winner of Canelo and Charlo will have all of those 4 belts. And with the exception of the WBC, who have their number 1 contender but haven't called the mandatory, there's no other mandatory challengers at 168 that I am aware of. So that gives him a clean run at undisputed 4 belts, lineal, Ring Magazine, everything in one go, in one match, rather than having to go and belt collect. So I understand it. Now, when it comes to his chances, well, his chances against Jermell Charlo will be exactly the same as they were at 154, because the same height, reach and size differences will still be there once the bell goes. You rehydrate, or maybe Jermell Charlo might be more he might be more full and full of energy and replenished at 168, because he's not cutting anywhere near the same amount of weight as he was cutting before. Neither with Terence, but obviously he's naturally lighter guy, but he's also quicker. Arguably you could say he's stronger physically. I would actually say he is physically stronger, and he may hit harder or just as hard. So those advantages he'd only have to overcome is the height and the reach, which he already showed he can do against Jose Benavidez Jr., albeit on 1.5 legs at the time. The Canelo part is a lot more interesting, because those two are actually the same height, if Crawford isn't actually a little bit taller. So Crawford's definitely got the reach advantage, he's got the speed advantage, he's got the ring IQ advantage, he's got better punch selection, like cleaner, more accurate punches. Canelo definitely has the power advantage in terms of shots, but there's the timing. Both of them are counter punchers, and they time off of each other. So it'd just be about, if Canelo can obviously break Crawford down, then he'd get to him later, whereas Crawford would be a lot more active in the opening half. But how would he do fighting with an extra 21 pounds or however much he puts on? Because realistically he doesn't even have to come in at 168, he could come in at 161 if he wanted, at 160.5, and sort of still be fleet foot but be big enough that he can just sort of take and absorb those shots. But it's a lot more of an even contest than people would assume. The only thing, Canelo is naturally bigger in his frame, so he holds that weight a bit better, but he slows down a little bit, or has to be economic with his work with that extra size on him. So there's no telling what that would do with Crawford. But it's an interesting scenario. For me personally, though, if I was him, he could definitely still make that fight for May or September next year. But if it was me, I would personally look to take on the winner of Zoo Mendoza, because Jamel's not going to come back down, and then at least that way you can say that you've got another legit championship in another weight class. So you're a 4-weight world champion at this point. The WBO will definitely be on the line. The WBC, yes, it will be interim. It could end up being elevated to the full one if Jamel doesn't come down. But to be totally honest, like, knowing the WBC, they won't make him forfeit or vacate that title anytime soon. So you'll just be a regular. You won't even be unified. You'll probably just be a one weight champion or one belt champion at 154. But then use that 154 belt with your super status to then demand mandatory for the 168 belt. Then you can jump in and have the unification. So personally, I would have that one in September of next year if you can possibly do it. I don't know if they'll allow you to keep, but I'm sure you could probably get away with that. You let Canelo face Charlo or Benavidez if they want him to face Benavidez or whomever at that particular point. You face Tim Tszyu in January or February, then take some time off. Then you can build into that 168 frame, take on Canelo or whomever has the undisputed at that point in September 2024. And then if that's the case, win, lose or draw, you can just put that sort of put the career to rest. If you win, then 5-weight world champion, 3-time undisputed, pound for pound #1 without a shadow of a doubt. No one can say anything, and you can literally just ride off into the sunset, say, yep, I'm out. I don't need it no more. Like, I'm cool. You guys maybe didn't want to give me my credit. Now you're gonna have to. And even if you want to talk shit, like, I've still done what no one else has been able to do. So, like, peace. And just literally keep it like that. That's the route I would kind of go down. But it would be a tall order. Like, there's no if, buts or maybes. He definitely would not be the favorite in any of those fights at 168, just because the size will catch up to you eventually, no matter how naturally big and strong you are. But yeah, it would be a case of, would his IQ and everything get him through that particular situation? And I guess it would be a point of him moving up at that point, just when his athleticism is just starting to wane or just starting to go on the decline ever so slightly. So that would also help him, because he would still be naturally quicker than these guys, but maybe not as quick as the 147s that are still in their prime or coming up, or even the 154s, because he'll move faster than these guys that are naturally or closer to sort of 168. That's my thoughts on it. But yeah, let me know what you think. And do you think it'd be a smart move? Do you think he has more of a chance than than I'm giving him? Do you think he has less of a chance than I'm giving him? And would it be something you'd be interested to see? Or do you feel like he's still got other work he needs to clean up at 147 or 154, and Canelo's got his own work, or Charlo's got their own work that they need to deal with as well, so they need to stop cross-pollinating and just get that done? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But as always, like, subscribe and share. Thank you very much for watching. It's the Hardcore Casual, out.